If we can get up our next guest, Tom Malone Jr., please. I will give you that.
Nice one.
And I am hoping that JD is somewhere because he has the cue cards, but whatever. We'll keep going. So, Tom, first of all, thank you for joining us here today. Tell me a bit about what you've been getting on. Like, well, I should ask you, you good, bro?
Yeah, I'm good. That's cool. Not like a cheat answer, by the way. I'm actually fine for anyone psychoanalyzes me.
What have you been up to like this weekend, this weekend?
I've been in London. I was doing so I'm a dancer as well as many other things. And yeah, it always sounds really corny to say it to people that aren't in the dance community, but I'm in it feels like a step up film. But I'm in a crew called Primal Instincts, and there's a few of us in different journeys, like different parts of our journey in the dance community. So like a few of us that have been around for longer sort of mentor the younger guys and that kind of thing. So we had like a training camp because we're from different places in the UK where we all make sure that we all get together for the weekend and train, do some different kind of like training games to build and stuff. So yeah, that's where I've been.
Cool. So you do that now. I mean, going back to what a lot of people here will know you from, Gogglebox. Can't get away from that. I'm sure it follows you around. Yeah, it follows you around, I'm sure. So yeah, tell us a bit about that, JD Jones.
Yeah, so first of all, big inspiration of mine, you know, especially being...
Thank you very much.
No worries. Especially being like for your autism awareness, but take us right back because we understand you're a dancer, understand you also do boxing, and also as well, you've been on Gogglebox. So take us right back. How was it being on Gogglebox with your family? Because like that was something which most people know you from. So,
it was mad. Like it's a very weird experience. Like especially as someone that's done a lot of stuff, like you said, the boxing and the dancing and stuff. So I'm from a very like working class background. Like grew up in a council house, like very humble beginnings. But my dad's all my life has worked on the roads, like tarmacking or that kind of stuff, driving a grab wagon. And he comes from a long line, basically, of Irish people that worked on the roads. Like his whole thing was that he wanted me to have all the opportunities that he didn't have, and my brothers and sisters and stuff as well. There's a lot of us Irish family. But yeah, so I'd grown up doing the dancing and the boxing and stuff, and without sounding like I'm blowing my own trumpet, did quite well at them, overachieved at them. So it's like I'd done quite like really cool things that I was really proud of with all that kind of stuff. And then it was a surreal experience that we got asked to do this thing, and suddenly my mum and dad, who'd always been in the background, were in the limelight as well, and we'd be like recognized and stuff. And it was never for any of the stuff that obviously I'd always put weight on as the cool stuff I'd done. It was like getting recognition just for being a family that people could relate to and because they liked us. And in a way, it was surreal because it was like, it's not for the stuff that I put weight on, but also it's amazing because it's just because people actually like us for who we are, and there's something beautiful about that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think as well, having watched Gogglebox, people buy into your family, and I think out of all like the people who run Gogglebox, your family in particular stood out to a lot of people, and a lot of people bought into like, oh, this is such a lovely, cohesive family. Everyone got to know, even though it's just like you're just watching TV, like everyone got to know each individual character to sort of shape a picture of how you sort of interact with your family. So, like, did it sort of change you in any way being on that? And then also as well, with other elements of your, say, for example, your dance career, did it affect it in any way, or was it just sort of, was it separate, let's say?
So it didn't change us at all. I think we kind of, when we first got asked to do it, we said no. So we'd never seen it at all. It was like, because we was on it from quite early, and they literally, they don't take applications. So it's not people that have like wanted to be on it that have applied for it. But at least this is how they did it at the time. I don't know if they still do it the same way. They would just go into businesses or go into pubs and say to people, "Oh, do you know anyone who'd be good for it? This is what we're looking for," whatever. And I was teaching at Studio 25 at the time, which was a dance studio in town, shock out. And there'd been a week where someone had been ill on reception, so I said, "Oh, my mum will cover." So my mum would come in, and me and my mum had been having stupid little like banter arguments, like while we'd been there, and people had been laughing. And they came in one day and asked if anyone would be good for it. They didn't speak to my mum, they spoke to Sue, who owned the studio, and Sue was like, "You need to speak to Tom and Julie." So yeah, they came in the next day. No one had told us that they were coming in, by the way. So they came in the next day to say to my mum, they were like, "Are you Julie?" And she said, "Yeah." And she said, "And is that Thomas?" My mum calls me Thomas. But basically, there's a glass window behind the reception, and I'm in the studio practicing, and I was trying to work out why my windmill to headspin wasn't working right. So the first impression they ever got of me was me stood with my head against the wall doing this. So in their mind, they've gone, "He's not normal. This makes good TV." So yeah, they asked us, and at first we said no, because we were like, watching people watching TV sounds rubbish. My dad thought there'd be a camera in the living room 24/7. He was like, "What if I come downstairs in my underpants? It's going to be..." So we said no. And then they asked again, and they just wanted to do a test shoot. And they said to my mum, they were like, "Look, chances are you won't even get it. Like, can we do the test shoot?" So she said, okay. And then in between doing the test shoot and being asked to do it, it was on late one night, and me and my mum were up and we watched it, and it was actually funny. So we said, okay, we'll do it. But to answer your question, we were like, if we're going to do it, we're not going to be something we're not. Like, we'd rather be disliked for being us than loved for being someone else. So that was always kind of our mentality to it. And if you've seen my dad, you can guess the kind of person my dad is. My dad's not changing for anyone, Joey.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
it was, yeah, we were just us. And I'm grateful because when we meet people, like I've been very lucky to do some great things. I did celebrity coach trip, and the girls from Birds of a Feather were on it, who are like British icons, and they turned around to me and was like, "We've watched you grow up. It's weird." And like, to me, that's surreal because, like I said before, I'm just a kid from a council house. Do you know what I mean? And like, because we've been authentic with who we are, these people feel like they know us, and we're blessed for that.
That's really good. And what I like about your journey in particular is you've used a sort of platform, which, reality TV, but you've used it as a catalyst to do other things. And, you've always been a dancer, always been a boxer. We'll get into the boxing later. But tell us a bit about your dance career, because I know you do like you're part of a break crew. Tell us a bit about the crew you're part of, how you got into it, how it started, and how it sort of shaped who you are as a person.
So yeah, I started dancing at 6. My like I said, I come from a long line of people that work on the roads and stuff. So when my sister wanted to dance, my mum took her, and I just started joining in at the back. Like, I was just, I heard the music and just started joining in. So my mum came back and said to my dad, I think Thomas wants to dance as well. And at first, she wasn't sure how he'd take it, because you've seen my dad. This is a very manly, excess testosterone kind of guy. And he just turned around and said, "Well, take him then." And my mum was like, "Oh, it's fine." And he was like, "I never want him to grow up and turn around and say, I could have been this and you stopped me." So yeah, started dancing, never looked back. Over time, my taste in music obviously wasn't classical music, so I ended up going into more of the street styles and breaking and stuff. Was lucky enough to be mentored by a guy called Gavin, who was in Manchester at the time for his uni. And he was a part of the top breaking crew in the UK, which was called Soul Mavericks. So he trained me. Eventually, I ended up working my way up and earning my stripes and joining his crew, Soul Mavericks. And then during COVID, we started speaking to a few guys. A lot of the older members of Soul Mavericks moved on and was having kids and families and stuff. And yeah, we started training over Zoom with a few of the younger guys in the UK that really wanted to push. And after COVID, rather than just kind of giving them a t-shirt and saying, "You're Soul Mavericks now," that they wouldn't feel any ownership of because they hadn't been brought up through the older guys, we decided to just start a new crew from the same lineage, but something that they can build for themselves and have more of an ownership to it. And that's how Primal Instincts was born.
And it's not just like, you don't just train, do you? Like, you go around and you compete as well, don't you? Tell us a bit about the competitions and what.
So I've won world championships with my crew. We compete all over, mainly Europe, but all over the world, representing the UK. A lot of the time, a lot of international events will invite crews that are the top crews in their country. And we're lucky enough that we often get invited to a lot of places and get to see the world and dance. And I get to do cool stuff with my best friends, so I can't really complain.
That's like really like inspiring, especially, you know, knowing the background, how you started and everything that you come across. Now, also another thing that a lot of people some people do know in the audience, some people might not know, but boxing.
Yep.
So dancing and boxing, how did boxing come about?
So this actually links back to my autism, but as a kid, I was at one point labelled the most violent boy at my school by a teacher. And what we thought was a very bad temper at the time was me having meltdowns. But my mum and dad was like, okay, well, we'll get him into something that will teach him to control his temper, because at the time it was a bad temper. So they got me into boxing, and I'll be honest, it did. I liked winning more than I liked being destructive. So when you're boxing, if you lose control and you just start swinging, you're going to get punched in the face. You're just going to start losing even worse, get more angry. It's not going to go anywhere. And it taught me to kind of step back and in the moment under pressure, think logical to get the outcome that I want. And yeah, so I boxed for a few years, ended up being Northwest champion at 15. Yeah, it's actually really ironic. My boxing coach loved the fact that I danced. So he had all these pictures of famous boxers and stuff up in the gym, and he had a newspaper article cut out from when I won a world championships as a kid dancing that he put on the wall and was like, "That's why Tom's got good footwork."
Because technically boxing is like a dance.
Yeah,
you know, they call it the sweet science, but that's not dancing. But it is a sort of a dance if you actually look at the maneuvers. Like, what came first? Because you mentioned about the boxing. Did both sort of elements help each other, would you say, with the dance and the boxing?
I was dancing first. So I was dancing before boxing. And yeah, 100%. I think a lot of the movement helped me a lot. I was good at generating like power from a lot of places. I could box going forward and back. So I think I had a bit of an advantage in understanding my weight in that way.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Now, there's one thing I want to touch on, and it's actually something that both you and Jamal have in common. Now, when we started the podcast, we initially had some dream guests that we'd have on. Now, one of the dream guests was the late Ricky Hatton, who both yourself, Jamal, and yourself, Tom, have both interviewed. Being a boxer from Manchester, Northwest champion, I would say, what does Ricky Hatton mean to you? Because he wasn't only a boxer, but he was also, you know, he prided himself on his mental health journey as well. And unfortunately, based off what happened, like, what do you feel about Ricky Hatton?
Ricky Hatton was my hero. I can't lie. Like, from being a working class kid from Manchester, I wanted to be Ricky Hatton. Do you know what I mean? He watched my second fight. He that's the kind of person he was. He would go to local shows and that's when he was the world champion. He would go to local shows. It was a show in Earlham, and sit and watch all the kids fight. Had time for everyone. I got him to sign the card that had the belts on it, sign my head guard. Like, that's who he was. He had time for everyone. And like some of the guys were saying earlier, a lot of the time it's the people like that don't have the time for themselves to care like that for themselves, because they give it to everyone else. But yeah, just a hero, and I'm blessed that I got to give him his flowers in person.
Mm-hmm. For sure, for sure. I think, like, you know, Jamal was out there the day, unfortunately, he passed away, and it kind of like, obviously I was there to support him, and then, you know, I saw in your story, the interview that you had with Ricky Hatton is incredible, and, you know, learning about your boxing journey, learning about everything that you've, you know, he meant to you as a boxer is incredible. Now, the final part of your story, and it's something which touches close to home here, is, so I'm dyspraxic and like I'm on the spectrum, and I understand how difficult it can be day to day. Now, you being on TV, you doing dancing, you doing boxing. One part of your story is you were diagnosed with autism at 28, which is quite late diagnosed. How did that feel initially?
Like a huge, like, weight lifted off my shoulders. It was a lot more. I remember thinking it doesn't change anything. Like, I've got this far. It's just a new level of like knowing why, kind of. And I didn't realize how emotional I would feel with the confirmation as I did. And it changed my perspective of like looking back at things, like looking back at memories and looking back at experiences. A lot of experiences that were very negative or that I'd always looked at and thought, why did I do that? Why did I do this? It changed my whole perspective when I do look back at those things, and I was able to kind of give myself grace for them and understand why I was a certain way and why I'd reacted in the ways that I had to certain things. And yeah, it's hard to explain, but it's like a wave of understanding, but also an excitement of now I get to learn more and learn new ways to cope with the things that I've always struggled with, because I've got access to these tools of other people that have been through the same thing and specialists that can help. And yeah, just the understanding itself.
Because what I find is, like, you being such a public figure, you know, being public spaces, whether it's boxing, whether it's dancing, whether it's even like being on TV, there's that sort of stigma of people who have autism who say, hold on, what, you know, it doesn't sort of align. So, like, was there any sort of, like, looking back when you got diagnosed, and you mentioned briefly about how you sort of unlearned certain things, or you learned certain things which were elements of your autism diagnosis beforehand? What were like the biggest like key factors which you kind of like made sense after the diagnosis?
So I'd always been the kid that said the wrong thing at the wrong time. I would take things literally. Like, I wouldn't assign. There's one story that stands out like vividly all the time, where I was at a dance competition and there was a girl that did her makeup different that day, and she'd said something about like, oh, how do I look? And I was like, oh, it looks weird. But to me, the definition of weird is different than usual. I'm not assigning the connotation to it in the social setting that most people would. I'm just going, that's what the word means. And then her mum was furious, kicked off with my mum, nightmare. And I'm there going, I don't know what I did. It's true, do you know what I mean? And like, to this day, I think I was right. But it did look weird. Apologies. But yeah, like, looking back, I'm like, oh, I didn't understand how what we say, the connotations of things change in social settings. And I still struggle with it now. But I also, looking back at things, can see how over time, when people meet me now, and when anyone that met me in my teenage years and later on in life, I became very reserved. I'm someone that I'm not never the loudest in the room. I'm someone that will stand back and I'll think carefully what I say and when I say it. And if I'm unsure if it's going to go down well, or if I'm unsure if I've read a situation right, I just won't say anything, to the point that a lot of the time I was misunderstood for being standoffish and stuff like that. And now I understand that that was a response to being the kid that always said the wrong thing at the wrong time. And I think, yeah, that's one of those misconceptions and the things that I've looked back at and gone, that's why. And that's just the biggest example of how being diagnosed later in life changes how I look at things in the past, and understanding how I've come to be the person I am now.
I think it's like inspirational, the fact that you can look back and you can say, this was me, this was things that are affected, which don't necessarily define who I am. It's just things, the circumstances and hand that you've been dealt. Now, one thing I love about your content as well is we are in this modern age where there is people who are sort of redefining, say, for example, the autism experience, because there's a lot of sort of misconceptions, as I said, the fact that you're a dancer, you're a boxer, that there is almost like, and I can say it being dyspraxic, there's a lot of people who, when they say you've got autism, you've got this, they look at like the stereotypical things like Rain Man and stuff like that, you know what I mean? And I think that, what would you say the biggest misconceptions are for someone who is autistic or who's on the autistic spectrum that you've sort of discovered, let's say?
Like you said, people think everyone's Rain Man or like a Sheldon Cooper, like obsessed with Star Trek. I mean, I do read a lot of like books about dragons and stuff. But aside from that, we do sometimes fit some of the stereotypes. But it's the same way that every person that's neurotypical varies massively. It's just, there's just as much variation within autistic people. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
like we're not all the same person in different fonts. We're different people completely. And rather than people look at me as an autistic person, it's like, I'm a person first. But like, imagine iPhones. Yeah, everyone has an iPhone. I'm an Android. That's all it is. I just run on different software. But that doesn't mean that every Android's the exact same. There's different models that do different things. You can go on this app, you can go on that app. Like, people have different interests. And my thing is that we don't have to fit the stereotypes, and we don't have to be the box that other people want us to fit in. Do you know what I mean? Like, we all have our own hyper focuses. I might be super passionate about boxing and dancing. Someone else might be passionate about a Star Trek, and that's fine. But then someone else might be super passionate about singing and be a rock star. You've got like Oscar winners that are autistic. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's people can excel in all these amazing ways. They don't have to be aligned by the stereotypes that society puts on them. And that's what I try and get across in my content, is that you might look at me and see the most normal person in the world because that's how I present, but that's just because I don't align with what your idea of autism is. It doesn't mean that I'm any less autistic. It means that your perspective was skewed. And that's what I try and educate people on.
And I think, again, that comes down to sort of the expectation of what an autistic person is has completely changed. And you're one of the pioneers of that, to say, like, I can do this, I can look this way, but I'm still representing this community or this sort of type of person. Just coming on to the next point, I'd say, is with your content, and I understand you represent certain organizations as well. What was the initial sort of catalyst to start the content? Was it a sort of, when you sort of got diagnosed and there was a, you announced it, was there a sort of, I wouldn't say backlash, was there sort of lots of people reaching out to say, oh, Tom's autistic, he represents me? Was it sort of that, or was it sort of?
No, so I actually didn't get diagnosed for me, which sounds weird, but I'd gone my whole life with people being like, maybe you're on the spectrum and stuff. And my mum actually did take me to a doctor when I was a kid. And back then, because again, I didn't fit the stereotypes, they knew a lot less about autism back then. He tested my hearing because I wasn't responding when I was doing something that I was hyper-focused on. And he diagnosed me with being ignorant. So that's not even a lie. He said he's not deaf and he's not got anything else. He's just ignorant. So yeah, shout out that doctor. But I basically went my life being like, oh, well, I've found ways for me to cope. Looking back, not always the most healthy, but I'd found ways for myself to cope. I thought, it's not going to change me now. I'm in my 20s. It's whatever. And then it was one of my nephews was suspected of being autistic. And it was all the same stuff that I'd done as a child and all the same signs that I displayed that he was displaying. And at that point was when I was like, okay, I'm going to find out, because if I am and he is, he's not going to have to grow up second guessing all these things that he's not getting and not understanding and thinking, why is he different and why is he not getting the things that everyone else gets? Because he'll have an older family member that he can relate to that felt the same way, and he'll have someone to speak to about it. And that was my main reason for getting diagnosed, was so that if we did both end up getting positive assessments, which we did, then yeah, he wouldn't ever have to feel alone, and he'd get it. And when that happened, I thought, well, if I can be that person for him, how many kids out there that are like him don't have that person? Like, I didn't have that person. I mean, looking at it now, I can see it so clearly in older family members that never had a diagnosis, but they weren't to know. Do you know what I mean? So I thought I can be that person for all the kids like him that don't have someone that they can't relate to, and they can look at me and go, well, there's someone who's like me, who's managed to do things that he wanted to do and not be held back by what society thinks that he should be. And with that platform, I can help people. I can educate people that aren't on the spectrum. I can, just be the person I wish I had. Do you know what I mean?
Right. I think it's time to actually open up the floor to any questions. I'm going to come up this time because JD's done his fair share running about. So I'm going to have to do that with the lights because I can't see. Oh, there's one right here. Is that? Oh, head over.
Hi. I only discovered before today, obviously, and I knew that you were a guest here. So classic, went on your Instagram and I discovered you were autistic, and I was like, right. I have someone in my life at the moment who's just recently been diagnosed with autism at a later stage in life. And for them, they could never put their finger on that it was autism. They thought it was all the other things, like feeling misunderstood, like what's wrong with me, etc. How would you best say, like as a man as well, what's the best way to support someone who's just been given a diagnosis that maybe they weren't expecting or they weren't ready for? Like, what do you think the best way to support them is?
I think you can always, like, I had a process where I kind of had to remind myself that nothing's changed. Literally nothing's changed. I'm exactly the same person that I was before the diagnosis. I just have a tool now to understand myself. And I think that's the main thing, to reassure people, like, you're the same person you was yesterday. You're still you. All the same things that make you an amazing person, they still make you an amazing person. But now you have access to this information that can help you cope with things that you struggled with before and give you an element of forgiveness for yourself for the things that you do struggle with, because there's a reason you struggle with them. You're not just a human that's getting it wrong. You're a human that deals with things in a different way and processes things in a different way. And I think that grace is what's important.
Who's next?
Sorry, I hope that answers the question.
Because I'm right here. I'll go with you.
Yeah, just first of all, massive respect for using your platform to advocate.
Thank you.
And JD also, because I know one of the first episodes was around your dyspraxia, and it was an interesting episode. I was also diagnosed autistic at the start of this year, 43, so kind of later in life. I'm curious how you talked about the process after diagnosis and kind of like learning more about yourself. I'm curious how you, to give a little bit more detail about that, and particularly around like unmasking and kind of just being yourself in certain environments rather than hiding those differences.
Masking is the weirdest thing in the world. I went through a bit of a roller coaster when I first got diagnosed, where I went through a phase where I was like, okay, so which parts of me are me and which parts of me are the autism? And having like a bit of a identity crisis of that part of me I thought was part of my personality, but it's not, it's autism. And then I got to a place where I was like, oh, well, I can't separate myself from my autism. Every process my brain goes through is filtered through an autistic brain, right? So that's just who I am. And then I went through a process of, okay, so which parts of me are my mask and which parts of me are my personality? And then after that process, I came to the conclusion of every single person in the world, autistic or not, is shaped by experiences. And our masks are our ways of basically coping with the experiences we've been through and building up how we cope with certain situations, how we survive. And as much as there's parts of our masks that we can chip away at and go, that bit's not healthy for us to have now we've got the information, there's other parts where it's just shaped who we are. And in a situation where it's easier for me to get through this situation that's uncomfortable, if I do have a little bit of a mask, that's also okay, because that's just me being able to get through it without having to go home and sit there going, why did this happen and why did that happen? And because I've managed to get through it. So I think it's trying to filter through which parts of the mask are unhealthy and which parts are just coping mechanisms, and trying to understand how we can use that information more wisely.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you.
I think we've got time for one more. I'm only going to go. Anybody on this side at all? Nope. All yours.
Hey guys, thank you so much for just sharing your stories and being so open on the journey. Really appreciate it. I think the question that I have is, I think more and more online and in these rooms, we're having more conversations about neurodivergence and everything that comes with that. And I think the more that you hear about it, the more it's like, oh, could that be me? Or, you know what I mean? It's just, it's so broad. And like you said, it shows up in different ways in so many people. Along with that, I've also seen that there's a lot of diagnosis issues where I've heard there's long waits in the NHS for getting diagnoses, or not even being able to access support to even get a proper diagnosis. What would you say from your perspective, what you've experienced, for those that might be curious about learning about themselves a bit further, but may not be able to get, I've heard there's like a 7-year waiting list for an ADHD, some things like that. How would you encourage people to just support themselves on that journey of discovery?
So personally, I think there's nothing wrong with if you're noticing a lot of traits in yourself and you suspect you might be autistic, there's nothing wrong with looking into the information and seeing if there's ways that will help you cope. If there's stuff in there that applies to you that's going to help you, then it's just a tool. There's nothing wrong with utilizing it. What I would say is, there's a lot of people that walk around and say, I'm this and I'm that, but they're not diagnosed. It's important to disclose that it's suspected rather than saying that you are this and you are that, because incorrect diagnosis can just be as harmful as not being diagnosed. So I think where you can use those tools, where they apply, where they are helpful, absolutely do it. But I do think you should try and, I know the waiting lists are awful. I do think it's worth trying to seek a diagnosis whilst using those tools to help in the meantime. And I hope that answers the question.
So I had to bob back down here again. I'll let somebody watch.
So just as we asked Jovino, we're coming into 2026 soon. What sort of aims or objectives do you have? There's a big influencer boxing thing out there. We see back in the boxing ring. Do you have any sort of like objectives for your dancing career or any sort of thing along those lines?
I would love to box. That's one thing that I never ticked off. As I got older and I went more down the dance route, I never got to tick that off. So yeah, if that opportunity was to come about.
Anyone at Misfits or anyone?
I'm here.
Any influence out there?
I'm down if it comes around. But yeah, dance-wise, just to keep building, keep ushering the younger guys through and seeing them do their thing and take things further than we did.
And one final question. I know we're short on time, but being someone with autism and also being late diagnosed, what is the one key thing you've learned since being diagnosed, which is good for your mental health and well-being?
For me, I have a very logical brain. So if ever there's a time that I'm overthinking or worrying about something, the first thing that goes through my brain is, what can I do? And to me, it's a case of if I can do something, then I should start doing the thing that's going to help. And if I can't do anything, it's okay. Well, that situation can't be helped. That's out of my control. But it's important to remember that life's not happening to me. Life's happening around me. So rather than start thinking, oh, I'm hard done by it, because, like, yes, I'm at the center of my life, yeah, but it's not that the world is happening to me, the world's happening around me. So I can't feel like it's directed at me. I'm just in the middle of it, and all I can do is control the controllables. And as long as I'm doing something productive then positivity stems from that and rolls from that.
Tom, brilliant. Once again, just thank you very, very much for coming down. We've had a long day today, so thank you.
Thanks for having me.
You can go home and sleep now. But yeah, thanks very much. I'm again echoing everyone here. Just absolutely brilliant.